We wanted to create something that can be deployed easily, that provide full comprehensive security with context. And there was nothing that was able to provide it before we started Orca.
Welcome to Powered by Snowflake, a series where I interview technology leaders building applications and businesses on Snowflake. I'm your host, Daniel Myers, and today I'm talking with Avi Shua, CEO and co-founder of Orca Security. Orca Security is a cloud security platform powered by Snowflake. Avi, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to have you in the studio, and I want to learn more about kind of your founding story for Orca, and tell me in your own words, what makes Orca Security different?
So let's start with what Orca Security actually does. So if I try to summarize it into one sentence, Orca Security is the platform that connects to your cloud environment, detect all the risks that exist in it, and help you prevent them from happening again. Now, if you've been into a security conference, you probably heard at least 40 companies that claims to do that, but in a minute I'll explain why we are different and why it matters. So I'll go back a bit about myself and about why I started Orca. So I'm a bit of a cliche of a cybersecurity founder. All I've done since I was a teenager is related to cybersecurity. I was excited by that as a teenager, then spent a decade in the Israeli intelligence, and then another decade in Checkpoint, in various of roles, and co-founded Orca 2.5 years ago. And when we looked at the problem of cloud security, we saw that there is many tools that are aimed to detect risk to help you handle cloud security, but none of them provide holistic solution for that. And what I mean by that, I looked at the characteristics of what you actually need from a solution. And we came with a major foundation requirement that we found a way to handle. And we call them the 4 C's. First and foremost, the ability to provide frictionless coverage. It might sound simple, but when you are trying to secure a large environment, you don't have the time or the ability to go talk with each engineer, each team lead, each DevOps and tell them change the way that you work in order to inject security. If you do that, you're bound to fail. Need something that can actually provide it without friction, that can connect to small or extremely large environment without changing it and provide full coverage. Second is something that detects all kinds of risks. You can't have one tool that detects vulnerabilities, another one that detects misconfiguration, another one that detects identity issues, and so forth. It's not manageable. Third, come context. Security tools, everyone that uses them know that they are notorious for giving you a list of 1 million critical items, telling you your house is on fire, you have 1 million issues you need to fix. And the reason for that is usually lack of business context. They tell you have a very easy to pick lock, you need to fix it, you have this vulnerability, but they don't see who have access to that and what's behind it. It's similar to auditing a bank and telling you that there was a security issue, so to have a cleaning supply cabinet that can be easily picked. Technically, it's the most easy to pick lock, but frankly, you don't care. No one can access it and there is nothing valuable inside. And last but not least, to be able to consume the data, connect it to your systems, use it within your internal processes. So summarizing it, we wanted to create something that can be deployed easily, that provide full comprehensive security with context. And there was nothing that was able to provide it before we started Orca.
So that's really impressive. And I love your background, how you came up in this space. I mean, it really means that you have that experience and that personal context to really see and have that vision of what a platform like this should do. Can you tell me more about how the growth has been at Orca Security? When were you founded and things like that?
So it's been an exciting few years. We started Orca 2.5 years ago. We're 8 co-founders. All of us were former executive and architects from Checkpoint. And we are now 400 people all across the globe. We raised more than $630 million from world-known investors such as Capital G, Google-owned investment arm, Temasek, which is the Singaporean government sovereign wealth arm, and many, many others. We are now protecting hundreds of enterprises around the world, everything from small, innovative startup with 5 people, all the way to Fortune 20 like SAP, covering many innovative organizations, whether it's Snowflake itself that uses it to secure its cloud environment, Robinhood, NCR, and many, many other organizations.
That is an impressive list of investors and some really impressive growth stats. I can definitely see how a platform like this would really need access and that context of a lot of data. Can you tell me about kind of how Snowflake fits into Orca's security's tech stack?
Sure. Before that, I'll just touch on one thing which is important. In order to do what we wanted to do, we had to develop some unique technologies that didn't exist before. One of them is what we call side scanning, which is a patent-pending technology that allows us to drill into the workload without touching that. We use essentially the snapshot mechanism of the cloud provider as a proxy to the state. And if we use analogies, it's similar to doing an MRI instead of sticking a needle in you, which is a less intrusive process. The second part is what we call the unified data model, which is essentially a technology that allows us to put all the data, whether it's the vulnerability data, the trust data, the identity, into one data model that speaks one language. This enables us to provide the context. So it's not like there's one tab that tells you these are the vulnerabilities, one tab that tells you these are the misconfiguration, another tab that tells the third, but a graph that shows you have this vulnerable server which have access to the internet through this load balancer that is also vulnerable, and an attacker that utilizes this vulnerability can utilize the trust to get access to your database that includes sensitive data. So this is tons of different types of data, structured, unstructured, things that are more state of the environment, and things that are more logs, that we see that this is the behavior on the platform, and this is the normal behavior, and this is deviation that might indicate that there is an attacker. And the strength of Orca is that we're able to take all of these data points and make one picture out of that. And this was not an easy task because you're talking about many types of data, different types of analysis, and we found Snowflake to be an amazing partner in doing that. I'll give some examples. In order to detect anomalies, we need to take huge amounts of log data and run machine learning algorithms on that to devise a model of the standard behavior and whether what we see currently is a deviation which is strong enough and what is the implication of that. So this is something that we use Snowflake for that allows us to effectively analyze these amounts of data in mass, run the algorithms that we need on them, on organization ranging from very small to the largest on earth, and at the same time enjoy benefits of data sharing that customers that need also access to the raw data for other purposes don't need to pay twice and can get the same data processed in two different tools.
So that's really exciting. Can we see a demo of this today?
Sure, I'll be more than happy to. So the first thing that I always love to show is how easy it is to onboard it. In order to onboard an AWS environment, for example, it's only these 3 simple steps. You don't need to do anything beside it. You can onboard multiple accounts using 4 steps. And this is not only a usability feature, it's literally a security feature. Because that way, you know that you can cover everything. There is no excuse not to onboard Orca. We had Fortune 100 organization that told us that they spent years trying to engineer agent into the environment and failed. And with that, they were able to onboard everything in one day. So this is the first thing. You just get coverage to everything, and this is security functionality. After that, the Orca scan starts, and you can see all the things that Orca found. It might seem overwhelming at the beginning, but you can see that things like malware, vulnerabilities, identity issues, and a long list of items. But I always love to show the attack path capability, which is the way that we combine data points into meaningful attack path. And let's show an example of that. So this is an example of a case that the platform found a critical attack path. It's not just a vulnerability, it's not just a data issue, it's not just a lateral movement. It's a combination of alerts that together means that an attacker can breach your organization. What we see here is that you have an internet-facing server named Web Nginx that have a vulnerability on it. An attacker that utilizes it can reach and get access to a key that is trusted on this Jenkins server. Now, getting access to the Jenkins server allowed the attacker to assume a role called permit S3 for Acme. Now, this custom roles inherits a role called Amazon S3 full access. And this role allows access to a bucket that includes PII on that. And this is a chain of events that an attacker can take to get access from an exposed vulnerability to use more sensitive data, and it's all picked entirely automatically by Orca. When you drill down to that, you can see that there is a lot of crunching behind the scene. For example, if I look into this vulnerability that the platform identified as vulnerable, you can see the list of vulnerabilities that were detected. Again, with no agent, with no network scanner, completely frictionless. But the calculation on why the platform believes that this is exposed to the internet. So it's not just naive calculation, it's have an IP address, or an enterprise organization don't have a public IP mostly for the services, but that there is a route through this load balancer that gets traffic from Cloudflare, meaning that there's a path that an attacker can reach this from the internet, and combined with the rest of the alerts allow the full access to the PII. So this is, I'll say, the top way to see how within one click, few steps, you connect to Orca, you immediately find the most important issues.
I really love how you make this data observable, right? And having this visual journey of where the problem starts to the actual valuable information that they have access to at the end. And having it visualized like that makes it easy to understand and really, see the gravity of what is actually happening here. Can you show me more about, where within here does Snowflake fit into the tech stack?
Sure. So in fact, I'd love to show it and show another feature at the same time. I'll show a few features. One of them is the unified data model. We are a company that really believes in openness and transparency. We are not a black box tool. Every alert that we have in the platform, any capability, runs on a unified data model, and we show you the query that this alert is at the end of the day for the platform. So if, for example, we look for a compliance framework, for each check, you can see what is the query for the model. Each one of the alerts that we have is, at the end of the day, a query to the data model that we're able to run in order to find anything that triggers us. So I'll show an example. For example, you can run anything from show me everything which is exposed to the internet. You'll find everything that can be accessed directly from the internet, or show me, for example, any virtual machine that have, let's say that I'm just interested in an AWS EC2 instance that have on that an application with a name of Apache 2. I'll find everything that I have Apache 2 in my environment. As simple as that, full coverage. Now, this is one way that you can query the platform. Another way is essentially detecting anomalies. So this is our cloud detection response capabilities, where the platform learns the behavior of the users and uses that to build the baseline and alert of deviation from that. So for example, this is a case that the platform can tell you that there's anomaly detection, that you see EC2 instances created in locations that are usually not created by this identity. So for example, you can see here that the query is an IAM role with a probe unusual EC2 creation, and there's, in that case, creation by a role that is not using to do that. In order to do that, we have to take huge amounts of data. Sometimes we're talking many terabytes for a single organization of logs that consist of the cloud events, of activity on the workstation themselves, and to learn them, devise a baseline, and on top of that, creates the alerts. This is runs on Snowflake. We store these amounts of data on Snowflake, and we couldn't find any other solution that was effective as Snowflake for that. So we store all of that in Snowflake, we run the machine learning on that, we build the baseline, and we even allow our customer to use the same data and to run forensics query on the raw data which is stored within the shared Snowflake account. So they don't need to pay twice for the data, and in many organizations, there's no other way to do it. It's huge amounts of data.
So that's really impressive. And I remember you telling me about how you leverage the Snowflake data sharing capability. Can you tell me more about how that specifically that functionality has brought value to Orca Security and your customers?
Sure. So we have many types of data. Mentioned we have the posture data, which is more structured. We have more unstructured data about postures, and we have logging data. Now, logging data is very different in its nature because it's not a state, but something which is always appended. It can reach enormous sizes, but it's crucial to use it for the anomaly detection. Now, we needed to be able to capture all of this data to learn on it, but it's simply not feasible to copy it. The economics don't work. If you tell the customers that they have one location that may have petabytes of logging data, that you'll copy it and learn it, you can't make it in any way that works. And what we found is that we can use the same location used by their Snowflake instance, connect to that, and run together, both on the raw logs and the insights, and to share the same data and enjoy the economics of having it in one place.
So really having it in that one place simplifies operations for Orca Security, and it provides some level of additional security measures for your customers, knowing that necessarily they have more control over where their data is and how it's used.
Exactly, and it also enables the query in mass that is needed in order to actually find the issues, to build a baseline, and also run forensic queries on them. Because at the end of the day, once there is an issue, you may want to run a forensic query, for example, something like show me anything with the same ARN or same IP, and you need to run it on a huge amounts of data. And Snowflake does it perfectly without the need to pre-index or to try to structure the data into something it's not.
That makes a lot of sense. So how did you end up selecting Snowflake at the beginning? What was your process for selecting Snowflake to build this platform on top of?
So our data architect looked at the alternative in the market, both a managed, unmanaged solution, and essentially, after putting months into that, came into the conclusion that Snowflake is the best partner to build that capability. There is nothing else that can actually handle these amounts of data with the characteristic that we need, and furthermore, already in use by so many of our customers, so the data sharing actually makes sense for them, because it doesn't matter if you can do data sharing with a platform they don't use, it's not effective.
I hear that more and more about how the customers already use Snowflake, which is an enabling factor for you and as a provider and as an application to already do that data sharing, right? Just like you said, if they don't already have data in Snowflake, they're not sharing it in Snowflake, right?
For sure. It's so much an easier conversation to say, okay, you have this data, it's stored, you thought about whether it's allowed, whether it's compliant, etc., and you just analyze it and, okay, now let's move all of your data to a different place. Let's start a discussion about retention, about compliance, data sovereignty, and so forth. It's much easier.
And so you mentioned, Snowflake has been a pretty foundational element to enabling and building this platform. You mentioned data sharing. What other Snowflake features do you use or do you plan on using in the future?
So we are looking very actively at the app framework to be able to run logic much using Snowflake and to be able to run some of the anomaly detection using that. We're extremely excited about that. We have some thing on the roadmap that will use that, and to continue using that to more and more data types.
So yeah, that's really exciting. I know back in Summit earlier this year, Snowflake Summit, we announced the native app framework that allows you to really bring the compute closer to the data, right? And that gives you that programmatic guarantee that the customer's data doesn't leave the customer's environment. So it really seems like a platform like the one that you've built, you and your team, that something like that would be of pretty large value.
Exactly, and definitely you touch on the right point that it doesn't leave the location, which is huge value, but the latency is also huge value. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much compute you have, how much data you have, they need to be close.
Yes.
We have CPUs usually waiting idle for data to move from one place to another. It's like an untold secret that this is what CPU does the most of the time, wait for data. The more you can move it closer, the better you can provide analysis and the better economics you'll have for these computations.
And so 6 months, 1 year down the line, what should your customers be most excited about?
So the nice thing about Orca is that we haven't really changed the vision since we started it, but this vision is very broad. So there is so much we can continue executing on. So we released our cloud detection response capabilities recently that allows not to detect only posture issues, but also things that are ongoing. We're adding API security capabilities to the platform. We're adding much more capabilities to other cloud providers to support also Ali Cloud, Oracle Cloud, and many other. We're adding capabilities into the shift left to prevent more issues before they're reaching to production. And we're continuing always to improve the foundation of the platform, frictionless coverage, comprehensive security, and context.
That's great. And so if people want to learn more about you, your founding story, and really about Orca Security, where should they go?
So orca.security, this is the website, this is the easiest way. And one thing I really love to tell everyone that is interested in it, no need to put so much time, just try it. You can connect it in a few minutes and see what risk can exist in your environment. This is a huge difference for the Orca platform compared to others. Unlike previous tools that told you, go install Agent, which is a 2 years project that you need to be bought on before you can see the risk, just put 30 minutes, put it in either production if it fits your risk profile or smaller environment, see what it finds, whether it's open your eyes, you find your risk that you weren't blind before, and that way you can actually try it without putting too much time into it.
And so Avi, I want to say a big thank you for joining me in the studio today. It's been great having you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks to everyone watching. To see more interviews like this with tech leaders building applications on Snowflake, check out our other videos on YouTube and subscribe for new episodes. My name is Daniel Myers, and this has been another episode of Powered by Snowflake.